So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Finding Freedom Together, Session 5. We are here at the Buffalo History Museum with the support of Humanities New York, which provided a grant, and it is this partnership between Pastor Wiley Hughes and myself, Rabbi Jonathan Freirish, and we are thrilled that so many of you are joining us remotely. We have Anne and Jerry, who are here in person. So we are thrilled by having everybody here. And we look forward to not just a fruitful conversation today, but also we're going to really reserve at least the last 15 minutes to figuring out what we do next. And so by way of introduction, Pastor Hughes, did you find the poem you wanted to?
I found several poems. Now,
Okay.
You want a short poem or a long poem?
I think let's keep it short.
Let's keep it short.
Keep it
Okay.
moving along.
And I might use the other one later.
Okay.
We'll begin by a poem written by Langston Hughes entitled I Too. He says, and I quote, "I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen. Then they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America." Langston Hughes.
Amen to that.
Good. Really good.
So there is a lot to talk about today about solidarity. And before we jump to the conclusion, I want to at least introduce some of Snyder's ideas and have your thoughts as we talk about them before we move to this. His final piece is really that that freedom requires all of us to work together. And we can talk about that in particular, right? I can't be free if no one else is. I can't be free by myself. So that's and he takes on libertarians on this particular issue, which might be helpful for anybody who's looking for a conversation with libertarians who seem to think that if we were only just left alone, we'd be free. And that is not the way.
That is not the way
things work. So Timothy Snyder creates a rubric using a lot of different scholars. He brings us together on the idea of what it means to be free to as opposed to free from, and freedom to live better. And one of the things he points out is that with all of our emphasis on freedom here in the United States, we are in fact not free to live longer, that we actually live shorter lives. And he points out that for 5 years less life per person in this country over, say, Canada, which is, I think, our average life expectancy is 5 years or even less than that of the average Canadian. That's a lot of giving up freedoms for the sake of saying being free from interference to own a firearm.
Right.
So when we start defining free to, he offers a couple of things that help us think about this. First of all, we want to be free to live in a way that recognizes that each of us have a fundamental life, a life that's dynamic, that's more than just our bodies. We are not just bodies, we are living entities, and we need to be treated as such. Both we need to treat ourselves that way, and we need to treat each other that way, and that's fundamental to freedom. And in that, we all have sovereignty. So sovereignty is the first of his ideas, that we are sovereign beings, and that we can't become sovereign without help. We're not born sovereign. We acquire aid over time. When we are born, we need a lot of help to move around. We don't emerge in the world independent and free. In addition to sovereignty, we need mobility. We need the option to move wherever we want to go. And when we move, we need the option to be unpredictable. And that these three ideas, sovereignty, unpredictability, and mobility, are three elements of development. We are born into the world requiring assistance to become sovereign. We then prove ourselves to be interesting people with our families by being unpredictable. And then as teenagers, as young adults, we look to become mobile. And that those are essential aspects of being free to do things in the world. And then the final two are factuality, which we talked about last week. That is, a key element of freedom is actually agreeing on what's real in the world. I had conversations with my stepbrother this weekend. My stepbrother is a very religious, skeptical person who nonetheless is big into citizenship. So he feels like religion is constantly knocking at a realistic worldview. And I said, well, think of religion as helping us figure out how to live in a world that science describes. That religion is one of the methods by which we figure out how to live better in a world described by science.
That sounds very much like something Descartes would say.
Don't know.
Well, because he was a philosopher and a scientist, but he was also a very religious person. And so he understood that science and religion weren't necessarily diametrically opposed to one another, but they could also be, there's also some intersectionality there.
Well, I'm coming from a Jewish tradition, obviously,
Right.
that predates Descartes.
Exactly.
Since Maimonides was,
Right.
A head of the world scientist at the same time.
Yes.
The religious thinker.
That's right.
So it's very compatible from a Jewish
Mhm.
perspective, but in the American milieu, we have a problem, which
Yes.
is that public Christianity in public doesn't seem to be all that accepting of science,
Right.
regardless of whether or not it ought to be.
Right.
So we've got these 5 lenses on freedom. They are, again, sovereignty, unpredictability, mobility, factuality, and this one today, solidarity. And with that, we're going to start at the end, because I think there's a very powerful piece at the end of his chapter. So if you're looking at the handout I've sent out, it's the final page, and I will share screen so everybody can see it. Because it's such a powerful message, it seems a shame to not at least start there, and we'll go back and fill it in as we get to the end. There we go. Sorry. All right. So this is Snyder reflecting. So I'm going to read this first paragraph. Social mobility has been tougher for most Americans since my childhood, but in different ways for different people. When I was born in 1969, about 80,000 Black men were in prison. By 1990, when I watched the Reds win their 3rd World Series in my lifetime, he's a baseball fan, the figure had more than quadrupled to about 360,000. In the early 2020s, when I began to play softball with my daughter, nearly 700,000 African-American men were incarcerated. There are more people with life sentence today than there were total people in prison when I was born. And almost half of those lifers are Black men. I can speak of the different trajectories of my brothers and cousins, but no one of that generation, 16 cousins in all on both sides of my family, has been incarcerated or shot. Nearly half a century after the story I tell, everyone who stood in that line to ring the bell, and this is his story of July 4th, he had his family, they all rang a bell. They're still alive. I might take that for granted, but I shouldn't. Among the African-American families in Dayton, Ohio, or in New Haven, Connecticut, the count looks sadly different.
Seeing such inequalities is a matter not just of fairness, but of freedom for everyone. Whites drawn into racial politics obstruct liberatory policies. As my incarcerated student Alpha put it, you guys are oppressing yourselves with your own oppression. Freedom begins with virtues, with ideas of what is good. The moment we accept that the status quo is justified, we find ourselves in the dead land of negative freedom, defensive and helpless. It hurts to say that sometimes is wrong, and that it hurts to say that. Sometimes it's wrong, and that I bear some responsibility. But without that bit of courage, freedom never begins.
I can declare my own sense of America, but only if I am ready to accommodate others' stories. I can tell my own story of the 4th of July, but it helps me to know that Alpha's family saw it as a holiday that belongs to others. You know, to
Yeah.
channel forward Frederick Douglass.
Right.
Not my 4th of July,
Mm,
not my Independence Day.
mhm.
When I imagine his family barbecue on the balcony of an apartment in a housing project, I see myself and my own memories with greater clarity. Others reckoning with freedom begin elsewhere, which must be acknowledged, not only as a matter of respect, but also as a matter of logic. Evan, another incarcerated African-American student, wrote that freedom is a farce in America until we includes me. He is right.
That's correct. Amen.
Hi, Elizabeth. So if we start with Frederick Douglass and we end up with Evan,
Mhm.
we are looking at a span from 1854, I think, is
Thereabouts,
when
thereabouts.
Frederick Douglass gave his speech about not my 4th of July.
Mhm.
And 2023 is when Timothy Snyder published this book. So that's 170 years almost,
Mhm.
and nothing's changed. Or what has changed hasn't changed enough.
It's changed enough, it's going backwards again.
Mm.
And what has changed
Yeah,
enough is
it's
backwards
rolling
again.
back. Yeah.
Well, maybe, maybe not. Right? It seems like American society has decided we may be more resistant to going backwards than maybe we thought.
I hope.
People in charge.
Well, the people in charge can't even manage to hold a confidential conference about war planning. So I think we may have overestimated their capacities.
Yeah.
Uh,
Amen.
So, but here's this idea. My freedom, Wiley, your freedom, Jerry and Ann, all of your freedom, everyone on this call, our freedom is interconnected.
Hmm.
Our freedom is interdependent. You pointed out this phrase that he writes, that whites drawn into racial
Yeah.
politics obstruct liberatory policies.
That's a bar right there.
Now,
Mm.
why did you pick that out? I have my reasons, but I'm interested in yours.
Because the deeper I got into anti-racism, because I'm a part of an anti-racism task group in my presbytery, and the work that we do in this group, the deeper we got into the work, we started to realize why the work is so slow and why the change is so slow, because they're getting in their own way, right?
What do you mean?
Meaning, and we've talked about this, we've hinted at this throughout our discussion, that the work of anti-racism often undoes itself because of the way it is presented, number one, and also because the arguments that are made are not they're not as salient as we like to think that they are. I'll give you an example. So we this is funny. I'm gonna try to make it brief yet succinct. So we were in a meeting and we were talking. They wanted to do a book. They wanted to do a book club, and they wanted to study Ibrahim Kendi's how to be an anti-racist.
Mhm.
And there were a few members of this group. There's like 15 of us, so there was maybe 3 or 4 members of the group that said, "Well, this is the anti-racism task group. Well, why do we need to read that book?" And I paused because I had only been a member for maybe 6 months. I've only been to 6 meetings. I paused because I when you don't know the situation, you don't jump to conclusion. I was gonna get on my soapbox. I thought, well, let me back up. Let me listen. So someone said, "Well, we read this book, when it first came out, and it was great. It was good. So why do we have to read it again? And another person commented, yeah, I think maybe let's find another book. And then it became it turned into a debate as to the validity or the efficacy of reading the book again. And I'm sitting here thinking, we could be moving on to the next thing, but yet we are here spinning our wheels about this one book. And it occurred to me that perhaps we missed the point of the book. And so I raised my hand and I said, we're debating on whether or not to read the book again. What did you get out of the book?
Mm.
And they said, well, some people felt like it made people feel ashamed to be an American or ashamed to be a white person, blah, blah, blah. And it was triggering this white guilt kind of thing. And I reminded everyone, I'm the only African American on this group, of course. And they asked
Not
me
of course. I mean, how many of us would know just how white the Presbyterian Church
Let
in
me
Western
tell you.
New York is?
if I'm the only white, only black person. So they wanted my opinion, and I gave them my opinion. And my opinion was this: I think that it is important, to make a long story short, I think it is important for everyone to be engaged in anti-racism work, but it's not a switch that you can flip. You just don't flip to becoming an anti-racist overnight. It takes time. The benefit of learning about the history of racism in our country is not to make people feel bad about our country. It's to make people feel good that we are involved in the work, that we have come so far, that there are some people who lived and died for me to be able to sit in this room with you. That is a testament to our solidarity as a nation. That is a testament to the work that not just black people, but white people and Americans put with their own, with their blood, sweat, and tears. That's a testament to the resilience of our nation. And the fact that none of you all got that,
Well,
you know,
so Ibram Kendi and Robin DiAngelo offer us a whole lot of wisdom about sort of how to be in the moment on
Yeah.
one hand, right? How to be an anti-racist, how to be a less fragile white person.
right.
And part of that is really to embrace our collective guilt, to accept that we have the work to do.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily offer a way forward, which is, I'm glad we're talking about this because I really want to think about what our way forward is tonight, right? We have the beginnings of a movement here.
Mm.
So what does our movement do next? In my mind, the other piece, and the Timothy Snyder piece on this, is really about history. You just talked about what it took for you to get here,
Mm-hmm.
for all of us to be here, right? This is a group mostly of women. Almost all of you work in jobs that it would be really hard to be a woman working a job in 60 years ago or 50 years ago. When I was a child, I know my mother couldn't open a bank account by herself. This has changed significantly.
Hmm.
So we have made progress.
Yes.
We can only see ourselves as making progress if we know our history.
That's right.
Right. So Snyder is saying we have to see ourselves as in it together, making a difference.
Right.
We also have to see how far we have yet to come, right? We have to see that in the 1800s, there were people working against enslaving people.
That's my point exactly.
Right.
Right.
And they were white people. and
Yes.
They were African American people.
Yes.
They were women and it was complicated, right? That the women's suffrage movement had a real identity problem about how to be both against slavery and for women's suffrage.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I know that is because, I've been doing a whole lot of reading because you and I have set each other on a path of learning together.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Manisha Sinha has an entire book about the history of abolitionism,
Mm-hmm.
looking at abolitionists and their relationship with also the women's suffrage movement. She then writes the most interesting updated history about American Reconstruction, which is the updated companion piece to W.E.B. Du Bois's Black Reconstruction.
Yeah.
We don't even agree about how to read history for 100 years.
Yeah.
People were telling the story of Reconstruction as if African Americans had ruined their own chances at democracy because they were incapable of being participants in American democracy. That was the version of American history that persisted well past W.E.B. Du Bois'
Yes.
attempt to correct it in the 1930s, right? Woodrow Wilson showed the first movie in the White House, and it was Birth of a Nation,
Yeah.
an elevation of the KKK to a heroic status and the quote unquote redemption, right?
Yes.
The undoing of Reconstruction in the 1870s and 1880s, redemption being the most awful double-speak word for it.
Mhm.
Taking that because Woodrow Wilson was a racist and he elevated racism to, the center of the White House and American thinking at the time.
Mhm.
And so this is a back and forth. This is fits and starts. This is 2 steps forward, 1 step,
Step
back,
back.
1 step forward, 3 steps back. This is the reaction that we're facing to Barack Obama being elected president. Right, so we are now in the full-on reaction,
The redemption. This,
the-
this,
the second
the
redemption
second redemption.
in to attempt to undo what was the second Reconstruction
Yep.
started with civil rights.
Yep.
So with that, recognizing all that we have to do and recognizing again, part of the challenge that we face is your white Presbyterian's reaction.
Yeah.
We've done it already. We've
Yeah.
read it
We've been there.
already.
We've been there. We've done that.
Stop making us feel so guilty.
Right.
So how do we do that? We've got, again, you happen to be the only Black person in the room, literally and on Zoom.
Hmm.
So white people in the room, how do we take our complicit nature, the part of us that has been part of American racism since 1619? A lot of research and a lot of hard work, but we need to do something now. We need to take our research and hard work and take it out of this place and into the streets. So what do we do next then?
I think we reach out and have conversations with people.
Okay. So who would you like to talk with, Allison?
Well, neighbors, people I meet on the train and the plane, especially if they don't look like me. And I have found the friendliest people on planes and trains and in waiting rooms. Very generous people that don't look like me. And now, in terms of politics, it's looking at opening conversations and listening to people who hear things and see things differently. But in terms of anti-racism, I agree we need to put into practice something about who we are and what we are. I mean, I wear this Kenyan bracelet that Wiley has seen and Kay has seen. And it was because I met a woman on the entering to a plane who bent down to tie my husband's shoelaces. He was a little bit unsteady and she offered him a seat. And I said, "Oh, I see your bracelet." She had a Kenya bracelet. "Are you going to Kenya?" "Yes." Well, she was a Kenyan, is a Kenyan, and we are friends forever. We correspond, we share things about our governments and about everything. But I like the way of just speaking to people and hearing them. Now, I don't know if that's going anywhere. I mean, it did in terms of friendship and other friendships. Now, is that a positive step?
Absolutely. It's absolutely a positive and necessary step, right? So there's a Jewish teaching about religiosity and spirituality that in every interaction we have an opportunity to elevate it, to adhere more closely to the divine in our way of being. And that is part of, repairing the world. And that we do that, in small ways and in large ways. So I think, and certainly this is the better teaching from Ibram Kendi, which is that in every moment I have an opportunity to be an anti-racist.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. I like his.
There's no such thing as a neutral moment,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
which is a huge challenge right now, because that means, okay, what am I doing at this time? Am I doing something in this moment that is allowing things to fall apart, or am I pushing to try to bring things together better? So yes, Allison, thank you.
You want to keep going, or
Go.
can I jump in?
Of course.
This is triggering something that I read in Ibrahim Kendi's book. And it also resonates with what Snyder just said. And I'm going to read what Snyder said because it's right in front of me. He says, freedom begins with virtues, with ideas of what is good. And that echoes what Ibrahim Kendi was saying, but also it's part of the shortcomings of the book. And you mentioned that the book doesn't take us anywhere. It gives us some great ideas, but it doesn't take us anywhere. And I kind of feel like it's because we haven't yet agreed on our values, right? We haven't yet agreed on them. And so we have multiple values, right? We're all engaged in this anti-racism work. We're all engaged in this work, but we cannot agree on what that looks like in its diversity. We're all kind of scattered. And that goes back to what the student said about we are often the greatest obstacle of the liberatory process is because we all have our different ways of doing it and we cannot agree on one.
So this is a pitfall of pluralism,
Mm,
right? So those of us who identify as leftists or progressives or whatever, a major plank of that is the acceptance of difference of opinion.
hmm
So agreeing on a way forward requires emphasizing something at the expense of another, right?
Mhm.
And Snyder is caught in that,
Yes.
right? He talks about this fifth dimension, the conversation of values, that one of the key elements is you can't put one value first,
hmm
right? Entrepreneurship cannot dominate over social action, right? We need justice and we need to elevate entrepreneurship. If we say the market is king, then we sacrifice justice
Mhm.
and equity and equality in the way. We also can't say equality overall either.
Right.
So part of it is, to a certain extent, if we're going to have a what next, we need to actually say, okay, what do we focus on next? Because Allison's right, absolutely. All of our everyday encounters matter, but really what's going to matter is what do we do with that spare time that we devote to trying to do better together? Yeah, and
Can I put like, what
And
is
then it
our
was-
end game? What is, like, in the world of social work, you have a goal, and then you break it down into all these little tasks along the way. And so some of these little tasks are all going out in their own direction. But do we all have a common defined goal?
That's the thing.
okay,
That's the thing.
so if our goal, part of this is an American fear of actually saying, hey, wait a second, let's be better like our northern neighbor. It turns out, Canadians live longer. Canadians live better,
Yes.
as do Finns and Danes and the Japanese for that matter. And if living better is something we can all agree is worthwhile, then we need to say, okay, which element of that are we going to work on first? And because I think, here in town, for example, George Nicholas, Pastor George, has started a health equity organization focusing on making sure that people on the east side of Buffalo have better health outcomes. I think that's really important, right? It's crazy that I can move to the other side of Main Street and have my life expectancy drop 10 years. It doesn't matter. On the other side of Main Street, white, black, or Asian, my life expectancy drops. The health outcomes drop. So I think, these things we can do something about. I think the end game is too far along. I think we need to accept that, maybe part of the end game is we need to say whatever we identify as social democracy, as social welfare, needs to stop being identified as the enemy. That when we provide universal health care for people, that's not communism.
Right. Well, and that goes back to this value thing, right? And that's kind of what I was hinting at, what I'm getting at is that we have to change our values. Let's just call it what it is. We have to get back to this idea that what benefits us as a nation is valuable. What benefits us as one nation with an idea that we are a diverse nation, but ultimately our greatest value should be that which benefits the nation in its entirety and not one group over another.
Well, that's why we need to talk about individuals in this. Elizabeth, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you. So when you were talking about the values, so I'm actually talking on the same topic here. I'm talking on values. And the way that I understand, you were talking a few moments ago about the variety of values that Snyder talks about. But doesn't he talk about freedom as the sort of arch value or something like that? Like he puts it up there as like
It's
a
the
value.
The value of values.
The value,
of values, right? Because the other values kind of they don't effectuate unless you have the sort of like positive freedom, and his sense of freedom is not just, he has this big thing about positive and negative freedom, and negative freedom is freedom from sort of the whole sort of like tear down the government and then we'll all be free. But he's like, it totally doesn't work that way, because human beings are where the freedom resides. It's like, and then the human being needs to be nourished and cultivated and supported in order to flourish. And he gives the example of a baby, right? And he says, the baby's born, and then you think, oh, well, we'll just leave it outside and it'll be free from everything. We won't like constrain it in any way. We'll just like leave it on the porch and it'll be free. And it's like, it's a baby. It's not going to do very well if you just leave it alone, right? You need to take care of it. So that to me is a very, not the baby part, that was kind of silly, but that to me is like a way of imagining coming together from many different places and walks of life and different orientations and different contexts and with different capacities and different needs. And if we believe in this sort of like identifying shared values, like where we can share values, we can take action that makes sense to our particular constraints and context, right? And he talks about solidarity as a value and all of these other things. So that makes a lot of sense to me, that we can come together in a pluralistic movement when we can identify our shared values. And I love that the idea of positive freedom as a shared value is such a beautiful concept, because it once you start thinking about freedom in a positive way, it starts sort of like unfolding all these other options, like me nurturing myself, or me nurturing myself and then having enough to nurture you. And this kind of like mutual raising up makes a lot of sense in that context. Anyway.
No, it does.
Absolutely. And go.
Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned that. For those who don't know, my wife is from Kenya. She's from Nairobi, and Kenya has about 60 languages, speaks about 60 languages. Many of those languages originate from specific ethnic groups. Okay. So there are many, many different ethnic groups in Kenya, and they're all separate cultures as well as languages. And so the difficult part of the politics in Kenya is to conquer tribalism. And what, you know, their current president, Ruto, is being heavily criticized because he campaigned on a platform that was against tribalism. And he won the vote because he promised the Kenyan citizens that he would not fall victim to tribalism, that he was going to make policies that would help the Kenyan economy, and that included everybody, that he wasn't going to elevate Kikuyus over the Luo, that he wasn't going to kick the Kambas out. There was this particular controversy about the Indian citizens in Kenya who immigrated from India, who were forcibly brought to Kenya from India by the British, and then they stayed, and so now they wanted to make themselves a separate ethnic group, and there was pushback against that. And Ruto campaigned and said, "Well, they are Kenyan too, and with them we still Kenya, and we become a better Kenya because we are all together in this and we need each other." And he won the popular vote. And now that he's been the president for a couple of years, he has totally abandoned that platform, and he has descended into tribalism, and it is destroying the Kenyan economy. And it's that example of people wanted the solidarity. There was no issue with Indians becoming an ethnic group within Kenya. They only did so because they had a population that was enough to impact politics, right? And if they voted, then they had a say. And so it's like a microcosm of what we could do in America if we just hold to those same ideals and say, hey, this is good for America, not just good for white people or just good for Black people or just good for, but this is good for America, and find value in that. I mean, for me, that should be of the highest value. If I were a president, that is exactly the campaign I would run. I would say, look, I'm not here just for Black people. I'm here for everybody, because if I'm just here for Black people, that's not going to help Black people. And then it's not going to help the country. But if I'm here for the country, then everybody who is under the umbrella of that country will reap those benefits.
And to add, Elizabeth, I saw you raise your hand again, but in particular, the value system needs to start with persons, with people.
Mm-hmm.
That freedom is abstract when we talk about the market
Exactly.
or speech.
Mm.
And we have a tradition of using Jefferson's words, despite the fact that Jefferson didn't think of them the same way we use them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So Lincoln and then King used Jefferson's promise of all people are created equal
Mm-hmm.
very differently than Jefferson intended.
Mm-hmm.
Snyder is asking us to use life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness similarly.
Mm-hmm.
Because going back, Elizabeth, to your question, to your assertion, Snyder's assertion that you brought forward, that freedom is the value of values.
Mm-hmm.
That we cannot pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness without freedom. That liberty's in there, but you can't have liberty without life. That they are intertwined, and life for each individual person and liberty for each individual person, because we need free people to have a free country. That the personhood piece, I think, is the start. Because what's different about us versus Jefferson and Madison is that none of us in this room is a fraction of a person anymore. Right? In this room, I was the only person who potentially could have voted at the Constitutional Congress. Because I'm the only white guy. And as a Jewish white guy, my vote was bargained for back and forth through the first 100 years of the state of New York. Depending upon who was running and who felt they could count on the Jewish vote was given or taken at different times. So we need to start with personhood. Because when we identify every person as deserving life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that every person includes everybody,
Mm-hmm,
right? Because this is what's being attacked.
mm-hmm. Personhood.
This is what the birthright citizenship
That's exactly what it is.
thing is attacking. This idea that some of us are people and others are not. This is what the attack on trans rights is. This is what the attack on women's health is. That who counts as a person is under attack.
Yeah.
So we need to start there. We need to reassert what it means to be person. And then say everybody who is a person is deserving of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we need to go back and use the language of our country to organize our thoughts and then organize each other.
Taking on what you're just saying in the question before, an earlier question, what to do. I think the bottom line comes down to white men who make all these rules in this country, who seem to be the more powerful group. That's where the education needs to go and the values need to change. I think the answer to racism is getting the values of these white traditionalist men to broaden their scope of what the values of this country, what's best for this country.
So how do we get somebody to change their values?
Good question. I don't have the answer.
I don't think you can.
Someone might.
I don't, yeah,
You wanted
You're-
to say
you're
something,
muted.
Elizabeth?
Charlotte, want to say something?
Just very brief, quickly. This is sort of a side note, but it keeps coming into my head, so I guess I will mention it. And it's bothered me for a long time. Shouldn't maybe we be talking about pro-solidarity, not anti-racism? I mean, anti-racism already sounds like we're fighting with somebody. Couldn't we say, okay, we're trying to convince you about this. We want you to see this way. I mean, this country, well, that's why I don't approve of football. I mean, basically, no, seriously, football, we grew up in a country where fighting is what you do. And I tried to bring up my kids with cooperative games, not competitive games, but I don't think they grew up totally that way. But I do think that it has to be, we're not fighting you. Well, look how the politics has gone lately. You know, the Republicans and the Democrats are fighting. We're not working on things together. And they used to somewhat work together at least. And okay, I said I would keep this short. So there you go.
No, that
So-
was wonderful. It's hard to keep it short. I'm right with you.
preach.
It's like you
Preach.
get all full of the spirit to talk here. I love that you're anti-football, quite frankly. Anyway, that's another that's another conversation. Okay. Well, actually, so yeah, right. So embodying the value of freedom and making democracy a practice of everyday life, like you were talking about, Jonathan, and this isn't what I was going to say. I think I probably wanted to comment on something else, but but I love the thing that you said, Jonathan, about, or Rabbi Jonathan, sorry,
That's okay.
about that every interaction is an opportunity to heal the world. And then using that everyday life and having so much intention behind it to sort of have a practice of democracy in your everyday life and to embodying freedom, right? Because around us in our society, the prevailing ideas about what freedom is, like you said, these very abstract concepts and these very negative concepts of freedom. Free from governmental regulation and whatever, free markets, which is a total, it's a total phantasm that was invented. It's a total, construction of words, and not of how
Oh,
reality
and
is.
Snyder does a very good job, if you want to look more deeply into this chapter, deconstructing any attempt to establish free markets as positive at all. That
Right.
when we place freedom in the realm of market, what we do is destroy people. So, yes.
Yes, that's like a double, yes, how excellent, you know, and making it this practice of life rather than a philosophical concept, even though this is a book of philosophy, but it's a book of philosophy that's advocating this different take on these concepts that are sort of articles of faith in the United States in the way that we conceive of our nation. And I think that I think they're timely, and I think that whatever this movement is that's emerging at this moment, it really is going to be, I think we really are, I'm really convinced that we really are in this sort of really new era, you know, and it's not just, it's like the chaos in our government and all of these other things. And, you know, and you were saying, why does anti-racism work take so long? Because, and you know this, I know you know this, is because we're creating a new culture, we're creating a new way of being in the world, we're creating a new way of relating to people, and that is operating on our unconscious, you know, as well as our conscious levels. So we're like, we're endeavoring to sort of like turn around and look at all these things that are like, you know, like the iceberg below the surface of the water, and trying to sort of like, you know, maneuver the iceberg to go a different way, right? Anyway.
Right, and as Pastor Hughes is likely to point out, we're attempting to create something that never existed before, right? There is no point at which we've gotten this right.
Yeah. Good
I
point.
wasn't going to say that, but you're exactly right. It's true. It has never been done before. But I want to respond to what Charlotte said, because I hear you when you say, why can't we focus on the solidarity part? And more so to your follow-up statement about why does everything have to be a fight? Something that, and I often rely on the wisdom of my elders and my ancestors as well. My grandmother used to say, when she talked about bullying, because I got bullied a lot when I was a kid. And my grandmother would say, sometimes, son, you have to speak to the bully as a bully, because that's the only language they know. That's unfortunate, but that's the way it is sometimes. We fight because fighting is what got us here. This country was built on the fight. They fought against the natives. They exterminated the natives. They fought the land. Everything is a fight. It's the culture. It's the society. And so we cannot speak peace to a violent person. They don't understand that language. What they understand is violence. And so when you want to be heard, you have to scream because everybody else is so loud. It would be nice if we could lead with peace, but we cannot, because that's not what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with peaceful things. We're dealing with violent things. And we would love to talk about solidarity, but I don't think we can talk about solidarity without the context of why we are not in solidarity now. And that's another way that we liberals, we leftists, often become obstacles of our own liberatory processes, because we love to skip to the end without doing the work to get there. Malcolm X said it best. Here I go. Malcolm X said that we would love talking about Black people in America. We would love to sit at the table of brotherhood with all the people at the table. But if you continue to look at me as not a person, then there is no table of brotherhood. Perhaps if we step back from the table and we empower ourselves and we educate ourselves and we economically empower ourselves and elevate ourselves, then we are equals. And now as equals, we can sit at the table of brotherhood, basically saying that there can be no solidarity in the face of inequality. So only if we are all equal people can we then talk about solidarity, right? But if there are people who are inferior, and if there are people who are viewed as less than because of color of skin or economic situation, then there is no solidarity. There can never be solidarity because the superior, so-called superior people will always drown out the voices of the inferior.
Yes, Ann.
Isn't, and I could be way out, but I feel like the solidarity thing spoke to me, but I feel like the bottom line is it boils down to fear. They're, hate to pick on them, but that group of white men with the power are fearful of others rising up at all to become equals because they will somehow then lose their power.
Yeah. So there is a way through this that I think we're dancing around. So if we, I came up with this idea that we start with personhood, but personhood means individuality. So there is no monolithic white male power structure. There is no monolithic African-American revolutionary group.
Right.
We need Malcolm and Martin.
Mm.
We need AOC and Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris. We need a broad-based understanding that when we start in discussion, we start with the person there. So we need to start with certain types of discussions are, let's band together and figure out how we do something together. Certain discussions are going to be, I don't think you're ready to work with me yet, and I'm not ready to work with you yet.
That part.
I have to stop you from doing something destructive.
That part. Mm-hmm.
Because Malcolm X's protest against Martin Luther King was Dr. King was busy sitting down with people who didn't care
Right.
and who wouldn't be an ally.
Right.
And which is why, Malcolm X said Dr. King is starting with the table of brotherhood with people who are just going to sit there and take from you.
Right.
So we can't do that. But we do need to find the partners in power, because some of them are. We do need to identify the people who are in power who will never partner with us or will be false partners, right? Mitch McConnell, an unreliable partner at best.
Moscow Mitch.
Right? And how do we treat people who are out to destroy the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness dream? We treat them as hazardous.
Right.
I am terrible at this. I am bad at protecting myself from dangerous people because I'm too trusting, too willing to go in and make alliance with somebody who is more likely to stab me in the front.
Mm. Mm.
And so we need each other to figure this out, because we need to say, okay, when we say what next, when Allison says we need to have conversations with more people, we need to say, okay, who next?
You said something that kind of struck me. You said that the idea of personhood is tied into individuality. Was that
Yes,
how you said it?
Yes.
And I think that's where the intersectionality should begin. And I'm coming to you from an aspect of individuality from an indigenous people's standpoint.
Please.
When I say indigenous people, I mean the people who were around before colonizers around the world. We're talking
Right.
about indigenous people in this part of the world, indigenous people in the other side of the world. The understanding of the village, right? So the social order of an indigenous culture was the individuality as the individual as it relates to the whole.
Mhm.
So there was a strong sense of individuality, but your individuality was incorporated into the larger identity of the village. So
For sure.
everyone has a space, everyone has a role, everyone has a designation, right? I'll use particularly my ancestry is from West Africa, particularly the Hausa and Yoruba tribes in modern day Nigeria. In the Yoruba social hierarchy, every person has a name, and that name, there's a name that you've been given, and then there's a name that is given to you. And that the significance of that is that who you are as an individual is not diametrically opposed to who you are as a member of the larger group. And so everyone in the village knows you by your village name. You have a family name, everybody in the family knows you by that name. So your name is long because you have a name for each step in the social hierarchy, so that you have a place, so that there's no feeling of, yes, I'm an individual, but my individuality is respected and known by all. So that if I go to my grandmother's house, she will call me by that name that everybody in that generation knows me by. If I commit a crime, everyone in the village will come together and sing my name to remind me of who I am and to remind the village of who he is. He is not a bad person. You remember him. This is so-and-so, the one who used to climb trees. So it was one of those things where, yes, strongly individual, but also that individuality was deeply connected to the larger identity.
So absolutely, because let's not be swayed by libertarian individualism.
Exactly.
Right? Radical individualism is crap.
Right.
Like, there is no getting off the grid.
Right.
There is no living on Mars.
That's right. You can't do it.
There is no independence without the rest of us.
That's right.
So
Yeah, I know, right? Send me to Mars, man.
so, but again, we don't get to do that.
Right, we don't get to do that.
So I'm gonna give us homework because there is the what next.
Mm.
And while Pastor Hughes and I are gonna continue to get together, you can find our weekly discussions at 12:30 on Thursdays. And we invite everybody to at least find us on Facebook Live when we do it, or find us on YouTube. Please, if you'd like to continue to stay in touch, stay in touch. You can find us at opendoorjudaism.org. We are grateful to all of you here who are supporters, and you can send us emails at rabbijonathan@yahoo.com. But you can just find all of our contact information is at opendoorjudaism.org. You can find us on Facebook. We are so grateful to the Buffalo History Museum and to Humanities New York for making this possible. Our what next, I think, is who do we invite into conversation next?
Mm.
With whom should our next conversation be? We will go wherever you send us, and we will go with you. We will go with you to Johnny B. Wiley on the east side. We will go with you to the Presbytery. We will go with you to Bishop Lee Miller of the Lutheran Synod here in Western New York. We will go with you because it's only by going with that we will make a difference. Yes. First Jerry, then Sharp.
Yeah.
The people who need the message the most are the people less likely to invite you in.
Or the less likely to actually come to the conversation.
Yeah.
Some of these ultra conservatives.
We're not going to go with them yet. Let's be realistic about who we go with.
That's right.
Like-minded altogether.
That's true. I see what you're exactly right. And that makes sense.
We need a bigger group to demand that others
Yes.
hear us first.
Yes, I
Yeah.
agree.
And when we have the bigger group, then we can't be ignored by those who are less inclined to listen.
Okay, I've got another idea.
Please.
I love the idea of the two of you mixing the culture here and doing this.
Mhm.
What would it be like to bring in some other cultures, maybe some Asian religious, I don't even know the name of their religion, not here. Nobody.
Well,
Then
well, We have Hindu colleagues and Sikh colleagues and
Muslim
Buddhist colleagues and
colleagues.
Muslim
Oh,
colleagues
yeah.
here in town.
a larger.
Okay, let's broaden
We
the
can do that.
conversation. We could definitely.
We can do that.
Yeah.
I just love the idea. This is what brought me back.
Okay,
I'd love to do that.
okay, so that's homework for us.
That's homework for us.
And in fact, one of our next potential conversation partners is a person I've been talking to, a Saudi American, who
Hmm.
I have had a very productive conversation about Israel and Palestine.
Oh,
Uh,
that's awesome.
Yes.
Okay, you wanted to say something? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, everybody should know, I really should take Charlotte off my name. Nobody calls me Charlotte. I'm glad you've been calling me Kay. Anyway, one thing, and maybe it's homework for you two guys. I'm sure you know Nanette Massey. It seems to me she's even joined on this. And I just recently discovered she has a Sunday discussion, not too different from this in some ways. And you might want to get together with her. So the group of people who come to her, I mean, from my point of view, the whole group of that would be really good. So now I'm probably going to right now do Sundays and whatever you do, but you might want to talk to Nanette and see what she could put together.
Nanette is in it with us. We are very much in conversation with Nanette, so thank
I
you.
thought, okay, because I think you could make a bigger group just by bringing, although again, I think she complained that, not complained, sorry. She said this past Sunday that it was mostly white women, if I remember, in the discussion. And I don't know, maybe women are just more conscious of this kind of thing because we've been through it on a lesser scale than,
I think it's who's willing to prioritize their time.
Mm.
And I think
well, that
Uh,
could be, yeah.
speaking as a Gen X husband, one of the things that there was a recent study about couples post pandemic, where
Mhm.
everybody was working from home and all, and and there was no more inclusion or taking on of household chores and duties by men than there had been beforehand. And so one of the things that men continue to complain about is that they don't have time for the things that are important for them, which are
Yeah, my
often,
husband was a workaholic, so to speak.
which are often things that don't include anyone in their family, even
Mm.
when they're not doing things like
Mhm.
getting the kids ready for school or
Yep.
cooking or cleaning up. So this women have a culture, generally speaking, and I'm sure I will get dinged for this, of making time for things that are important without taking away time from other things that are important. So women, I think, are better at that in general than men are,
Mm.
because men expect a certain degree of leisure time where they're not doing anything.
But we take the
Yeah.
time to get for ourselves.
There you go.
We sacrifice ourselves for other, oftentimes. Even the self. Part of why I'm here isn't just for me, but it's for my 20-year-old daughter and the generation that follows her.
Yeah.
So
I
our,
don't know if everybody else looks like that.
So our next conversation needs to be more multi-faith, more
Mhm.
multi-ethnic, include more partners, and we will do that.
Can we go outside of states? Because not
Of course.
everybody has faith.
Absolutely. 100%.
I don't know if you know any of the surge people. They're a little fringe,
I do know the search people.
but they have some common thoughts.
The who people?
Standing United for Racial Justice. It's a white people doing anti-racism stuff.
Never heard of him. All right.
Hmm.
Do some research.
We could talk about that one, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
that's
So please be in touch with lists of next partners and next locations, and we will hit the road, as it were,
Mhm.
with whomever will join with us.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't want to keep everybody here for too much
Okay.
longer, but since Pastor Hughes started with a poem and then came up with a great Yoruba teaching, I'm going to close with a poem, but Tay, you wanted to say one thing?
I just wanted to ask you one thing. You mentioned the Thursday, and I had seen something just the other day about your Thursday sessions. Could you just tell us a little bit more? And how do I join it especially if you're going to wait a couple of weeks, to make a decision about the next one, and then you can do the poem. But I just wonder, could you just say a little more about the Thursday and how we should get involved, or could?
Well, you, Tay, by virtue of being a supporter, will get a notice of Thursday's 12:30 meetings. They are Thursday at 12:30. There are Zoom links available for those people who are material supporters of Accomplices for Justice. Those of you who've made donations before, so you'll get an email notice of them. They are most Thursdays at 12:30 just for half an hour, and they are available, of course, on YouTube and podcast afterwards as well.
Oh, after. Oh, yeah. Because sometimes Thursday is busy. Yeah. Thank you.
So
Okay. Poem is fine.
if you look for it on YouTube, you can, if you
Ah.
just search Accomplices for Justice, you will
Okay.
find it.
Okay.
So this is the poem that I thought was appropriate. This is Zelda, an Israeli poet originally from Ukraine, who wrote, this is originally in Hebrew, but here it is in English. Each of us has a name given by God and given by our parents. Each of us has a name given by our stature and our smile and given by what we wear. Each of us has a name given by the mountains and given by our walls. Each of us has a name given by the stars and given by our neighbors. Each of us has a name given by our sins and given by our longing. Each of us has a name given by our enemies and given by our love. Each of us has a name given by our celebrations and given by our work. Each of us has a name given by the seasons and given by our blindness. Each of us has a name given by the sea and given by our death. I hope that we can continue to focus together on the names that we all earn, the names that we've been given, and finding life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness together and providing it for one another in our interconnected, interdependent ways. Thank you so much all for being here, for supporting us, for being with us as we go forward and find more freedom, God willing, together. Regardless of religion, faith, or nationality or background. Thank you, everybody. Have
Thank
a
you.
great rest of your
Thank you.
evenings.